many of you guys have went through the student visa or the Canadian immigration process? Wow. So a lot of you will be able to relate with it, right? How many of you guys think it's easy? Raise your hand. And how many of you guys think it's difficult? It's long. Okay, that's good, right? So there's more people who are saying it's a little bit harder, right? And I always say it's like, if young bright minds cannot figure it out, then how can a 40-year-old can figure it out, right? Okay. I know my dad cannot navigate it, right? I have to sit next to him and help him understand what's happening. So my name is Ali, and I'm a co-founder of a platform called Logic. And we are in immigration and investment space, right? And a little bit about myself, just to add it, that my love for technology is so deep that my wife says that that's my first love, and she comes second, and she's not wrong, right? My laptop goes with me everywhere. No, and she's a psychologist, so I'm also her patient too, right? So it works out perfectly. So basically how it all started, right? So let's just basically 1999, right? We were all at home. My brother gets a call from my dad's shop that this is in Pakistan and he has been shot. Okay. Luckily, he survived. But interestingly, what he did right after he came from the hospital, that he applied for Canada. The moment he started the process, I'm talking about 999, right? Okay. Everything was on the paper. Barely, embassies used to communicate, starting with the emails. Some information used to be on the static websites, right? And then it was very hard to navigate the system, right? There were over 15 to 20 forms he has to fill out. English is not his first language, right? So there were a lot of problems and challenges, right? And on the other hand, of course, right, Canada wants capital. Canada wants educated people, right? So there was definitely a gap in the system when we saw it firsthand. Now, that was a long time ago. We immigrated to Canada. We came here. This country gave us a beautiful life, an amazing, amazing family in life. But we saw this problem being coming up with our friends, relatives, right? And I'm sure in this room too, you guys have friends and family, right, who have a hard time navigating the immigration system, right? Okay, because it's not straightforward, right? And one of the biggest problems in immigration system is what? Anyone can guess? Bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. It's always a lot of red tape. Yes. What else? Confusing. It's confusing. Yes. Yeah. And so one of the biggest problems is that how much fraud happens in this industry, right? If you come from overseas, you understand that there's a lot of fraud which happens in this industry, right? Agents, consultants, right? Sometimes your uncle who has helped 3 people and he thinks he's also an expert in immigration, right? So we have all of this mix of people, right? And then we have a complex process, a lot of red tape. So it becomes like a perfect shit sandwich, as I say, right? And that discourages people who are educated, who have capital, who want to come to Canada. They cannot go through this bridge of navigating it and coming here successfully, right? And what happens when someone doesn't come here successfully? What does that happen? They come here, they struggle, right? Postgraduate work permits and struggling with jobs and all of that. Right? So we basically said, you know what? One of the best ways to resolve this is, of course, technology, right? How can you eliminate fraud? How you can eliminate ambiguity? How can you eliminate bureaucracy? How can you eliminate all this red tape? That bring technology into play, right? Now, taking one more step forward, now what's within technology can really help us move forward from there? And there comes AI, right? Because AI, in principle, knows way more than an agent, and it can give way more accurate answers. And we start working on that gap. So what is one of the biggest problems in immigration was where our platform predominantly focuses on, we don't do student immigration, which a lot of you guys came through, right? Student visas and stuff. Our whole focus is business immigration and investments in Canada. Okay. Now, when you're coming to Canada, right, part of it that you want to come here and bring your family, but part of it is where should I buy the real estate? Where should I park my capital? Should I buy like a donate shop down the road, or should I buy like a pizza shop outside the like city? Is Red Deer is good for me, or should I take my family to Fort McMurray? Like, what is good for me? And there was a big gap in this process. So let me ask you, how difficult is it to come to a new country? Yes, no? Very, exactly, right? Requires capital, requires money, requires a lot of willpower, right? To come here to struggle. So a lot of these challenges are not very unique to business clients, but everyone has to go through this problem, right? And because the problem is very complex, that deters the right human capital and right money coming to Canada. If we can solve this problem, that can accelerate the right people and the right kind of money coming in and getting invested in Alberta, across Canada, basically, right? By the way, if you guys have any questions, you can just raise your hand and ask me, right? You can just interrupt me. That's question. So what have we done, right? What we did basically, we basically created an intake. First, I'll explain you the whole technology background, what does Logic platform does, right? So you understand it. I'm less of a nerd, maybe like you guys. My co-founder is a bigger nerd in the coding, right? But I'll be able to explain it to you that what's happening in the background. An AI intake, brings people through our platform, right? Through asking them over 20 questions, we help them understand that basically what program do they exactly qualify. They don't need to talk to an agent. They don't need to talk to a consultant. So that AI model has been trained on immigration law. It has been trained on the business opportunities in Canada, right? AI model knows that what are exact investment opportunities are available in Edmonton, in Red Deer. If someone wants to buy a farmland, it can help them navigate through that process. So the first step of the process is that what we said, where generally the fraud happens in this industry is not getting the right information, talking to an unreliable person. So we said, what, if there's an AI bot which is trained on immigration law, which is trained on basically settlement advice, and which is also trained on all the investment advice, technically you don't need to go and talk to an agent then. So this is the first step of the platform. We bring people in. Now you have to understand that when you go out and ask who wants to come to Canada, and Canada is being one of the top countries in terms of quality of life, in terms of education, in terms of political stability, everyone wants to come to Canada in the world. Majority of the people want to come to Canada, right? But how can you funnel them at the volume? And that's how we figured that our AI intake will funnel over 10,000, 20,000 people at once, where humanly it's very impossible for a consultant or an agent to do that. Okay. Let me ask you guys a question. When you started your studies, what was the first question it came when you were starting to plan for your study? What was the first question came in your head?
Am I qualified?
Sorry?
Am I qualified?
You are qualified. Excellent question, right? You can ask that to the bot. Hey, I'm 43 years old. I'm bachelor's. What program do I qualify under in Canada? Or the same application can be, I have a 3.3 GPA. Do I qualify for this program? What are the other problems or the questions came in your mind when you were thinking about coming to Canada to study?
Employment perspective.
Excellent question. Employment, how will I get my jobs, right? big challenge for new immigrants, for students, right? I think one of the biggest ones. Until are not economically stable, it's very hard to be successful here. Excellent point. What else?
Getting visa on time before the program starts.
Excellent, right? So meeting the deadlines, right? Okay. Now, generally, right? Where do you go when you have this kind of questions?
Immigration website, from the
Right. So then you go in that cycle of complexities again, right? Because immigration department has all the information on the website, where to find it, how to find it, how to take that information and line it up with like your university, right? So all of this basically combined into an AR powered intake basically. So technically the goal is, yes.
Well, I'm speculating, I'm not a student then.
Yes.
Anymore, but the question could be also which university or which province, which city, or the location in Canada I should go to where I have higher chance of success.
Thanks so successful. That's an excellent question, right? Canada is large. Like a lot of people, they don't realize it. It's like we're a big country, right? So the biggest question comes when people are coming to Canada is like, where should I go? Which university is good for my kids, right? Which city? I'm a nurse. Where should I go and settle? Right? Where will I get the jobs fastest? One of the big ones is the jobs and careers, right? Okay. So the first step in our platform is we basically vet them out to an AI chatbot. Once they're vetted out, we also rate them on their risk tolerance. Let's say you have already done agriculture business. Chances are that you will be more successful running a farmland than basically running an oil and gas business, right? These are two completely different things. So a farmer is matched up with appropriate opportunities, investment opportunities. A real estate person is matched with the appropriate opportunities. An AI computer engineer who is an app developer, he's matched up with the relevant opportunities. Example is like, if you are sitting right now in Dubai and you say, you know what, I want to buy a business in Canada. What do you do? Google it, right? Try it. Yes. Google it, right? Try to find it that where should I invest? What kind of business should I get, right? But how come someone living in Dubai can figure out what's happening in Canada in our backyard? It's very hard. It's very hard to gauge it unless you're not here. And having agents, having these people who are in the middle, right? That creates way more ambiguity. Right? One more thing, right? When you guys come here as international students or students, right? What kind of questions do you have after graduation? Can you give me examples? After you finish your degree?
Finding a job.
Finding a job, right? Okay.
Applying for work permits.
Applying for work permit, that's a big one, huge one for international students, absolutely, right? Postgraduate work permits, right? How postgraduate work permits work with what PNP programs will get me the fastest immigration, right? So all of this ambiguous information and complex information can be solved with what? What? AI, right? And how will it be solved, right? Basically, when the AI is trained on immigration law, when the AI is trained on settlement advice, when the AI is trained on job market data, when the AI is trained on business opportunities for them. So that's, yes.
I have a subtle question, maybe you can
Yes.
relate to later.
Yeah.
I understand the questions. I'm curious about the answers.
Correct.
Sometimes it's unambiguous. The law says A, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes one approach otherwise would be, this is what people typically do.
Mhm.
They typically, the advice is you do this job and that job, go to university. Another approach is not based on what people do, but what they should be doing.
Yes.
The statistics are that people take this job, make more money, or they report healthier lifestyles.
Yeah.
So they often coincide, but when they don't, how do you find our answer? Is it based on what people have done or what people should be doing?
Excellent advice, right? See, when I go to my uncle or go to my agent, he's biased, right?
Yeah.
He's like, Ali, go to Ontario. I was like, man, I cannot even pay rent in Toronto.
Yeah. no,
right? Because he's giving advice from his own emotional bubble, right? Whatever the knowledge, his biases, inbuilt biases he has. But we know that from an AI perspective, we can train it that the biases don't exist from that perspective. AI doesn't care that it's not biased towards Halifax versus Toronto, Toronto versus Vancouver. It's basically giving you answers based on your input. And the more better approach is, and this is an excellent point, our approach to it is a suggestive approach, not a bias-based approach, because they should be getting a solid advice, which is unbiased, right? And which presents them all of these opportunities very openly.
Well, to say, for example, you'll make more money in Toronto, but you'll be afford a house.
Excellent point, right? So cost of living, we have built it in. So the cost of living parameters, right? Let's say last month, the cost of living came up and we know exactly how much is the rent for a single bedroom in Toronto and how much is the rent for a single bedroom in Winnipeg and how much is the rent for a single bedroom in Edmonton. So when you're going to ask the chatbot, it will exactly tell it to you because it has the current data, right? Now, the problem is when you go to an agent is like, my sister lives in Manitoba and she says it's not good.
Yeah.
So that's a very biased opinion, right? Not only that, right? Who here have talked to an agent and haven't gotten the right information? Right? A lot of us, right? I mean, I've been through the similar process as well. Right? Okay. Because how can you fact check them? How can you check them that's accurate? So that's the first step that we built, right? Once they are vetted out in the platform, then basically what we do is in an immigration, right? You have like multiple people involved. What you said is the person who gets you the job or helps you with the settlement is not the consultant or a lawyer. They both have very different roles. But both have to work together, because if you guys want to be successfully settled in Canada, you need a team of advisors. You don't need one person. Okay. So then what we do basically in the platform that we pair up a whole team on a file. So there's a settlement advisor, there's an investment advisor, there's a lawyer who's helping them, right? Okay. And if they have kids, then there's an education advisor. They all come together, right? Okay, in the platform, and that's when the process starts. So all the forms are filled there, all the documents are in the back end. And now this is what we are working on in the second step of it, that we automate some aspects of this, advice. The challenge here is that like when you give an investment advice through AI, how you're going to balance off the legal liability. So there comes one of the things that like some of the limitations of AI, right? Where AI gives over and human elements take over. And this is where we are trying to create more solutions that, hey, is this process, like, I would love to see this whole process, humans are eliminated and it's all done by AI end to end. Right? But the way current structures and laws are, not everything can be done right in terms of end to end solution just because of the liability problems. And that's some sort of a problem. I mean, future researchers and AI coders can look into that, how that can be overcome, especially with the fiduciary responsibility of lawyers, right? If an AI suggests you to do this, lawyer has a different accountability mechanism, but how are you going to hold AI accountable? But AI suggested me to go in a startup visa program. Actually, that wasn't the right suggestion. So this is something that we need to train it even further to make it even better, right? With iterations. Our first version wasn't the best when it came out. It was built on 3.5, ChatGPT. The recent one we have built in, right, is spitting out way more accurate answers. And the more data we are collecting, of course, it's getting better and better because we are getting the front end data from the clients and we are also training it on that as well. Right. So traditionally, the research process takes 15 months, 12 months to 15 months to apply for this. Gather the forms, gather all of that information. What we have done, we are trying to reduce that into 30 days by using that. All of the information, they have it upfront, right? So they can start working on their file basically right away. Just gonna skip this. So, how big is the market? I just want to give you guys a perspective, right? How many have you guys have ever worked in tech, worked for a tech company? Yeah. How many of you guys have seen pivots? Pivots, right? So, to give you a background, we started off as an Expedia for lawyers. First, we said, you know what? People want Expedia for lawyers. There has to be an app where people should connect with the lawyers very quickly. But surprisingly, we didn't got the market traction we were looking for. And we pivoted. And since we have pivoted basically in the last 60 days, right, so we have done over $350,000 in revenue. But that's where we are barely scratching the surface here. Right? How much is one person? What is the minimum investment under the PNP program? Does anyone of you guys know? In Canada? Under a business immigration program, what is the minimum investment Canada requires? Sorry? 300, you're saying? Yeah, okay. So Alberta is the lowest with $100,000 investment. Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Atlantic provinces require $150,000 in investment. Ontario, $300,000 in investment. BC requires $250,000 in investment. If we are basically looking to serve 1,000 clients to our platform, what does that math looks like in Alberta? How much capital, direct foreign investment is coming here? Right. But what it does, it actually creates very targeted jobs in the economy. Because an investor who's sitting in India, he doesn't know exactly where to invest in Alberta or Manitoba or Saskatchewan. We are on track to do 2 million. It's projected for 2024. Hopefully, we're going to cross it by the mid 2024 with $200,000 in a monthly run rate. And our goal is to hopefully close at $3 million next year if we are on the right traction. Okay. With this traction, what are we looking for in terms of expansion, right? We basically want to use AI as a central core. I don't overly want to use the word AI as in but AI will be very much used across the platform, and we want to leverage it in order to make sure that this process is as much reliant on AI and very less reliant on the human. So in the future, we basically our goal is early next year, we want to iterate, we want to take out another version of our platform where just by answering 5 questions, instead of 20 questions now, it can start matching you with the right opportunities as the model is getting trained more and more. So we will be looking or actively looking for engineers, right? But someone who is really passionate about this space. Because there is one thing which is very critical here. For someone who is sitting in Dubai, India, Philippines, wherever in the world, for them, this is the biggest decision in their lives they're taking. This is the biggest decision, even bigger than buying a home. And we want to make sure as a company, we basically fulfill their dreams and give them the best possible solution. So if this is something that if it's an overall space you guys are passionate about, it's something that you personally have went through it, then you should come and speak to us, because that opens up opportunities and conversations, right? So far this year, basically we have been able to help over 200 families, right? These are not individuals; these are families successfully settled in Canada with jobs and everything, right? And one of the biggest things, as you mentioned, the biggest problem with new immigrants coming here is, how will I make capital? How will I make money? How will I pay my bills? And one of the biggest things we're trying to solve it in the platform, beside investments too, is how we can help them make and start earning money in Canada faster. Right? Because if you solve someone's problem with money, what does it do? They say other problems go away, right? With money. Not all problems go away in life, right? But majority of them do go away with money, right? And that's the biggest challenge that we want to solve. One of the things that we would love to do in the future is we work once we have really mastered the business immigration side, we look towards the student side as well. And that's something in our pipeline for the next year to further build. Because it'd be really amazing to tell an AI that I'm a creative artist, I'm 23-year-old, my high school is 60 points, what kind of program should I select or go into? More suggestive as a career advisor suggestion, rather than a traditional search-based engine approach, right? What are the master's program in Alberta? This is the current approach people take, right? We can change that whole narrative and give them an advisory approach. Why? Using AI, using large learning models, right? You have a question? Okay, right.
Question here. So, you talk about 200 families are successful here.
Yeah.
It's a success means making money.
Yeah.
And clearly that's one nice characteristic.
Yes.
How many are happy? How many,
That's-
maybe they make a lot of money, but there's no community there.
Yes.
Maybe they're happy to make money, but they didn't realize that they're actually in a place which has carcinogens, right?
Yeah.
And so, I know the medical context often with many different factors to go into the decision. The evaluation is complicated.
Yes.
Trying to save lives, trying to save money, or trying to reduce injuries. How can that not be the case?
That's an excellent point. One of the biggest things, the survey came out, why people are there's a hashtag trending moving out of Canada, right? Because of inflation and stuff. One of the biggest reason when you find people, they don't have a good social support system.
Okay.
Number one reason people leave Canada or they are unable to settle here, they don't have a right social structure around them. Friends, family, relatives, members of community. One of the ways that we are looking to solve it, right, is feed the data that, let's say if you tell AI that I'm a Jew, right? Okay, where is the nearest synagogue in Edmonton? Okay, there are 4 synagogues in Edmonton, right? What are the rents around them? Is there a rental apartment building or not around it? Because new immigrants cannot coming and buying the house right there. Okay. So that's how by matching them up with religious and social activities. Second thing, we mash them up with basically where ethnic foods are. Because that technically tells you where the density of the population is, right? So example is, let's say, Somali restaurants, right? You're going to find them in the north side. That's where a lot of the community is, right? You will have rarely find it in the south side in Edmonton. So that's how the model will be trained on that part, right? But that's not the problem we are solving right now, but this is an excellent problem. This is a huge problem that when immigrants come here, initial 3 years are very hard for them, right? And you ask them, it's like, are you happy? They'll be like, man, I'm struggling still, right? Because they're still trying to make their foothold here, right?
My question is a little more, but that's a great answer.
Yeah.
A little more subtle, which is, there's often, I think about a vector of outcomes, right? Yes, how much money you make, how close to the community you are, how dangerous the environment is. And so here's the Toronto location, here's Montreal, here's Edmonton. And I don't know there's a single way to adjudicate among cities.
Mhm.
But now maybe you can show the customer, this is what happens to go to Toronto, here's Montreal. And that person may say, oh gee, I understand I make more money if I went to Toronto, but I won't get the community. So a personal decision, now you give me the information, I can now decide what my valuation function is.
That's an excellent point. But so asking them on the parameters on what they value more, do they value community more than the employment opportunities?
Yeah.
Do they value employment opportunities over let's say rents, right? So that's an excellent point, because based on that data, one can prioritize that this person loves community way more and they are okay to compromise on the paycheck.
Yeah.
Recommend them Montreal because Montreal has one of the biggest Afghani communities out there.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point, right? So far, we have not trained the data on from that perspective, but I think that opens up our possibilities, because one of the biggest challenges that right now we are so fixated on the first challenge, get them here successfully, let them settle down here. But I think you made an excellent point that what will make them happy? Because happiness is very much tied up with your success in the long run, right? And happiness is not one dimensional.
Yeah.
Right, it's not just be done through money. It's not cannot be just done with job, right? So, what is our mission for basically
There is a question there.
Question. Yes.
Oh, can I speak?
So the question is,
I think those are the AI messages.
oh, they're just, it's like, let's fiddle it around this, right? Yeah, yes.
My question is slightly similar.
Yeah.
When your model gives some advice.
Yeah.
How do you measure if it is actually good advice?
Excellent point, right? So this is our challenge, right? Where right now we are not training the model after the intake currently, because that's where the human elements take over, right? We ask them what kind of businesses they have done, what is the risk tolerance with the investments, right? Let's say someone is very open to buying a laundromat and they are not at all interested in the food or fast food business. Right now, AI takes them until that point, and that human takes over. Right? Our next iteration of the platform is like we take that part even further. Challenge is that balancing legal and AI advice and how to basically make it work together. And that's something that we would love to solve in the next 12 months. That is a challenge at hand. Absolutely. Right. And it's also like counterproductive in a way too, right? If AI is doing everything which we want it to do, right? How will it affect our revenue models? So that's something when we iterate, we need to iterate it even further and understand that, like, how will it change your business model as well? But that's an excellent question. Right now, yes, Bobby. Yes. Another question. So right now, think about this way. From an intake perspective, understanding them, helping them understand immigration law, helping them understand which program they qualify in, that it does really well. Because that's a more checklist driven stuff. That's not an advisory stuff, right? Because AI still, we struggle with the advisory stuff there. The required driven stuff is very clear, very good advice on it. Right? Bang on. That, hey, I'm 34, I've done masters, my IELTS is 7. What are my chances to get into an Alberta, like, PNP program? That it can spit out with, like, bang on accuracy. Yeah. Yes.
So the question here is, how did you build the database of opportunities? And what are the sources you use for that?
Okay. So good question. So a part of the language models, we have built it on ChatGPT 4. Okay. We are using immigration. We have trained it on immigration law. We have trained it on, so there is an express, which is a federal immigration law. And then there's a provincial programs. We have trained it on that as well. Okay. Then we take APIs from realtor.ca for businesses. We take APIs from franchises for sale, right? And that's where all the data is coming from. The future data we are basically looking to, like, embed is the job market through Indeed. We are in talks with them that how we can integrate that. So if someone says, like, what, I've done masters in AI and I'm looking for opportunities in Toronto, the Indeed API can basically spit out to them job opportunities within the backend of our platform. So now the goal is that part of it is large language models, but part of it is like we have to use third-party APIs to pull in that data and then pretty much present it to them in one easy to understand format in the backend. So they don't have to make it understand that, like, they have to go through realtor.ca to look for business opportunities. They don't have to go to Indeed to look for job opportunities. And the long run is we are working with API with ApplyBoard, who is the biggest education supplier in Canada, with their API, which has the most number of university programs. I think it's around, they have 16,000 different programs, masters, bachelors, certificate programs. And that's also, we are training it on that as well, right? So those are our current data sources, right? And as soon as a government updates, they come with, so all the procedural law and immigration have been fed into the language model, because every time government changes an immigration law, they take out a really good in-depth, procedure PDF, right? How to do it. These PDFs are actually for IRCC officers internally on how to do it. So we have trained the AI on that as well. So whatever the officers are getting trained on, you're also AI is also getting trained on that. So we can get that accurate information around immigration to them, right? Yeah.
you explain more about how your company makes revenue? Like, are you charging a fee to people?
That's excellent point. A lot of people ask us like, how do you guys make money, right? So first of all, that like, it's a service, right? Someone comes and says like, I need to come and settle down in Canada. Can you help us like, end to end with immigration? So part of it is service, right? Okay. Think about it, it's a managed service platform at the core. We are a managed service marketplace for business immigration and investments. In the business model, it's a marketplace because on the back end, we have providers, we have experts, we have clients on the one side, and we are basically connecting them in a managed setting. It's like Airbnb is a marketplace, but it's basically like front end, like do-it-yourself marketplace. We are a marketplace, but we are a managed marketplace in the back end.
So you need a human team at the end.
Absolutely, the back end is all human. It's all human because it's all deal making. It's all like, hey, I want to invest $500,000 in the land in Manitoba. Now that is vetted out by AI, but where to find a land, what land he wants to do business on? Is he wants to do a dairy farm, egg, chicken farm? What is he wants to establish, right? What does the numbers look like? That's where the humans come. So far. And this is what we want to iterate it further, that how we can overcome that part with technology, with AI as well. By training it on business opportunities, by training it on franchises. Like, someone asked us an AI amazing question the other day, because we look at the data. I'm a teacher for last 12 years. I'm looking to immigrate to Canada. What are the education franchises I should invest in?
So if you're using your system and language model that you fine-tuned on the laws and stuff like that, when people are interacting with the system and you give a recommendation, then you ask the system why. Why do you need this recommendation or another one?
Yes.
Because that not only builds trust, but also shows that you're indeed using this law, this bylaw, or
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yes. Our current bot does give reference points.
Right.
That yes, it does give reference points to the T. If it's suggesting you program that why, it gives you exact PDF link or the web page link where that information exists.
So it gives resources. It doesn't say because you're 34, because you have the masters here, and because you have.
Yes. So, but that's where the legal liability problem comes in, right? That's a lawyer's job. We cannot just come and say, hey, you should be doing, and that's what we need to overcome that. And I think that's a lot of money problem, right? If we can solve it, that has a lot of potential in it. And that's, I think, like if we need to scale and we look at like as $100-200 million company, those are the big problems we need to solve, right? And I think it's also that brings in ethic issues at large in AI. Part of it is not just us. Part of it is like how government regulations are working out. And there will be more regulations coming around that. So we need to play within that framework of greater, like, what are the regulations around it? And I think that's where the gray area is, where, and because we would love to take it all the way to the end.
That were announced last week.
Yeah.
In Montreal.
Yeah.
But they're voluntary.
They're
not enforced yet.
Okay. That's good to know.
6%.
Oh, wow. That's good to know. It's good to know. Yes.
Actually, I was also planning to ask the same question about, is your platform, how to say, explainable? Does your model, let's say, explain its decisions? But as Osmar said, maybe it would also be able to provide a nice summary about, okay, because you are this age, because you have this degree, you are kind of recommended, for example, this province or this kind of business or whatever it is. I guess explainability of your model would be even nicer for customers.
Even nicer for customers. One of the things which we have understand that like understanding your what is ICP means? Ideal customer profile, right? Now, interestingly, our platform is not used by you guys. It's actually used by mostly 35 to 55-year-olds who actually are in investors. They have capital. They're generally right, like middle-aged people, right? What we find is that they don't like to do the whole process in AI because they don't want to ask AI, where should I invest $200,000? They are way more comfortable talking to a human. That's also the challenge. Sometimes your customer is not 100% ready to impose an AI solution on them. They don't like that solution. So there's also the balance where we need to understand the business and say, okay, well, AI itself is an amazing tool, but customer is not 100% ready to do the whole process on AI as well. Assuming that legal troubles don't exist. We personally, knowing our customer, we know they're not there yet.
And that's why I said the explainability will build trust.
Will build trust, yes, and that would help them take those next steps. Like an excellent point, right? Our goal for 2024 is to bring in over $100 million in direct foreign investment directly in Canada. That's our goal, and directly into the sectors. So I'll give you an example. We talked to a town of Strathmore. Strathmore said, "You guys know Strathmore, close to Calgary, right?" They said we have a huge rental housing crisis. And we would love to give a land on subsidy and tax incentives as long as someone wants to come and build it. But no one knows about these opportunities. There's an investor sitting in Dubai. There's an investor sitting in India who would love to invest in this project. But no one knows that this town is having problems with the rental problems. And that's what we're going to bridge the gap. That's our goal, is to take these ground level opportunities of investments and pair up with them with the foreign investors who are willing to, like, do foreign direct investment in Canada. Right. Yes.
So the obvious slippery slope begins by saying, here's an opportunity to, here's another $200. Could you push these people in my direction? At what point, how do you make sure that you're giving good advice rather than advice that was just mandated by, I will call it a bribe.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is where all the advice, right, goes with a disclaimer currently, right? Because again, it's the legal challenge, right? We are having, and it's a trifecta, right? It's immigration, which is also legal. IRCC consultants or the lawyers, which are also legal. Okay. Then we have real estate and investment and M&A advisors, right? Which also has a legal aspect and finance aspect to it. So what our goal is right now to really deploy AI to eliminate the research level questions, pre-qualify them and bring them so the humans can take over. At the core, we are trying to make sure that this itself works really well and seamless, right? In the second iteration, right, because this is the biggest problem that also AI doesn't know, we don't train it on like our revenue model. AI is not suggesting based on getting paid or like, what does how are we getting paid, right?
Yeah.
So that's an excellent
Well,
point.
again, that's always a word people have.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so right now you have this human team to advise, right?
Yeah.
And you want to in the future automate that process.
Yeah.
So I am worried bias can seep in when we try to automate the advising part of things.
Yes.
So what are your plans to avoid data bias? Because the advice is again going to be from the data that these language models have.
Yeah.
Language models also tend to hallucinate answers when they don't.
Yes.
So just what are your plans?
A nice, sweet, simple answer is to hire the smart engineers to solve that problem, right? Without being very technical, we need to train it quite a bit. Let's put it this way. It requires because these are some very big decisions. You're not suggesting someone on what you should use on your resume or cover letter from a suggestive perspective. So part of it is we have to train it. Part of it is I always see that there will be a human element involved in it. And it will be a combination of human plus AI. That's how I foresee it. But I think having a strong engineering team who can overcome these kind of challenges, this will be our next 12-month challenge, right? As we further build the platform, we should have a very strong engineering team to overcome potential biases. Absolutely. Yeah, they will exist 100%, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So when somebody's immigrating to a country,
Yeah.
they have to fill in all these forms.
Yes.
They know these forms are going to government agencies.
Correct.
So they trust that government agency.
Yes.
Or an endorsed kind of company. Some
Yes.
countries do it with via a company. On this platform, they know that they will put a lot of private information
Yes.
about themselves, about the resources that they have, they want to invest in things like that. So how do you deal with that to comfort them saying, don't worry, this data is protected.
Good question.
There's no risk.
Yes.
How do you convince them to do that?
Absolutely. Security is at one of the most critical things, right? Now, in this, right, we are eliminating two problems for them. One is that anyone who is in the back end advising them are certified, verified in Canada. Right. So that's number one thing, right? In the even the human elements.
To the chatbot.
Yes. So there are two trust factors. One is that like we tell them the platform has to be at utmost secure. Right. Okay. We have to sell them on trust, like and security. Absolutely, you're right. And the second thing, what we sell them on two trust points. One is that platform has to be very secure and it's secure, right? The way we have built it up. And we basically, second thing we have told them is the advisors, each and everyone who's working on their file is basically certified and verified in Canada. These are not your third-party agents who are outside Canada, so they are governed by the Canadian rules and their liabilities exist in Canada, right? So we are currently overcoming it by then. But what we have done is we have designed it in unstructured format, right? That the data has been in the containers. So not one part of the platform is vulnerable. If one thing goes down, other stuff doesn't goes down. So we have designed it in a way that not all the platform is basically it's interlinked, that everything will go down and all the data will compromise. And that has been considered during our build out. But that's an excellent, because one of the biggest things is security, right? Yeah.
Just gonna give you 5 minutes.
Yes. We're almost getting there. Right. Okay. Pretty much last one. If you basically, I'll just conclude it and I will just open the floor quickly, right? If you are passionate about this space, if this is something very close to your heart and you happen to be an engineer, right? So reach out to us as we expand. Edmonton will be our home base. This is where we are. And we have small teams across the world who are working on different sides of the project. But this is where our home base will be. So if you're interested, then reach out and I'll be happy to have a chat with you as well, right? Any other questions you guys have?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
You're good. Can I ask you questions? Yes.
One question.
Last question. Yeah.
Since you're dealing with immigration,
Yeah.
these are people that come from different countries.
Yes.
They speak different languages.
Yes.
Not necessarily just English.
English.
So will you, and I'm guessing currently, since you're using language models, you're
Yeah.
focusing on the English part.
Yes.
But what are your plans to add, I don't know, Punjabi,
Correct.
Arabic, French, Spanish, other languages?
Correct.
How will you do it?
So right now, our focus is on the biggest markets currently, India being the biggest, Middle East, Pakistan, the chunk is the biggest currently when you take the top percentile. But definitely the goal will be to make the platform multilingual and also have advisors who are, one good part is already our advisors are multilingual. Because the customers love to talk to a Punjabi person, loves to talk to a Punjabi lawyer. That's just how things are, right? So we have already taken that into consideration. But the platform eventually will also be multilingual, because the thing is that if someone is in Nigeria, not the best example, they also speak English, but let's assume there's a local language and they can understand that better. We will be making it multilingual, right? Yeah, eventually. Yeah. That's our goal. Service providers are already multilingual. So we have kind of figured that part out, but platform, we are not there yet in terms of multilingualness, right? And I think it's in the later development stages. The reason being, as I said, because if someone cannot even understand English in a written format, that's a red flag for them in an immigration as well. So part of it, it's all, now, mind you that in business immigration, business immigration, it's still only 4 is required in IELTS. In academic, you guys have to get 6.57, 7.5, right? In business, it's only 4. So the requirements are very low, right? And I think that's an excellent point. We haven't thought from multilingual perspective on the platform, but advisory perspective, yes, so far. Yeah, excellent point. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate for coming, right? And if you have any questions, you have my contact information. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well. Thank you.
Thank you.